Get started. Thanks for joining today. My name is Marko Gauk from the support department at SeisWare, and today I'm going to be talking about harnessing the power of an open database and how you can use SeisWare's database to do a whole bunch of things with code, basically. So what I'm going to go over today, I'm going to start by talking about what is Connect by SeisWare. So this is our new product that we're sort of promoting here, and what do I mean by an open database as well. And then I'm going to talk about how you can use Connect by SeisWare. And then I'm going to go over some examples of things that I've done with Connect by SeisWare, and then I'll leave any of the questions to the end. If anyone does want to ask any questions, I'm going to keep everyone muted for now, and then if you want to pop them in the chat at the end or say them out loud, you can do that. So, Connect by SeisWare, what is it? It's a software development kit for pushing and pulling data to and from SeisWare projects. So, the branded name is Connect by SeisWare. We were calling it just our SDK for a long time, but it kind of isn't very clear, just a three-letter acronym. So, it's a way of interacting with SeisWare projects using code. So, it's available in a couple languages. You can use C++, .NET, or what all the examples I'm going to show are in Python. And in order to install it, it's as straightforward as while you're installing the SeisWare application, there's basically just a toggle in the installer to include Connect by SeisWare, or our SDK, and have it set up on your system. If you are using Python, basically you just need to type import SeisWare, and then you can start coding with it. It does require a license, but if you use any SeisWare product like our geophysics, geology, or field development tool, you can just ask us and we can provide you a license for. It's just an extra component on your existing license that we can add, and then you can use it. And you can get all the data within a SeisWare project, except for the seismic data, which we store as SegWi format anyways, so you might as well just pull that on its own. But you can get at all our well data, log curve data, grids, horizons, culture, any stuff like directional surveys, time depth curves, just everything we store in a SeisWare project, you can access using our software development kit, or Connect by SeisWare. And so what do I mean by an open database? Well, SeisWare projects are a combination of binary files and a SQL database. We store certain data in our database, and then sort of to keep down the size of the database itself, there's other stuff we store as binary files. So things like seismic horizons or grid data, cultural data, that gets stored as separate binary flat files. And so if you want to get at the database, before we had Connect by SeisWare, or software development kit, in order to access any of that data, you can of course use the application, or if you want to do a SQL query, you can pull data from our database, or you can do a query in Microsoft Excel, or for any of the binary data, you can use an export or import if you're pushing data into the project, or if you're pulling data. Now, with the export import, you're a little bit restricted just in terms of the formats we've created. Our application has a set amount of formats for pushing and pulling data from softwares that we expect or come across more often. And so you are a little more restricted when you're using just standard text files, or if it's a shape file for culture or something like that. Using our software development kit or Connect by SeisWare, you can set up your data pipelines in any sort of way that you want, as long as you have the ability with your code to convert the data, transform it, and get it into a format that is really easy to analyze. And if you are doing it with code, one of the great things about that is it makes it a lot easier to scale up. So instead of pulling a single horizon at a time or a single directional survey, there's ways that you can use code to get that data out and transform it in a much more streamlined way than you might be able to just do it manually. So in terms of actually using our software development kit, I'm going to show a quick little example of a script that I've thrown together. So our Connect by SeisWare was originally built using C++ libraries. So everything in terms of how the code's written, even though you can write it in .NET, C++, or Python, looks very much like C++ code. So I've written a script that my GitHub repo should be posted in the chat now for a script that just makes it easier to interact with our SDK in Python. And so just to give you an example of what that might look like, I've got a Jupyter notebook here, so I can go import SeisWare, start off. So that works, that's great. Then I can do, so I'm going to bring in that script that I mentioned. So import swconnect, and that works. So far, so good. So this probably not very interesting. I'm just importing a couple libraries, not really showing off anything. So the first thing we want to do is create something called a login instance. And this is just a small little example, so don't worry, I'm not going through a whole tutorial of how to use our software development kit. But if I wanted to connect to a project, for example, I can create a login instance, use this script to connect to a Teapot Dome project that I've built. So let's just give me a second here. So I've got a login instance created, connected to the this Teapot Dome one. I can print off what that login instance looks like. It's an object. Now that I have that, I'm connected to a project. Now I can start grabbing some data from it. So I can get a well. So I'm going to specify my login instance. And then I'm just going to add in a string for UWI. So here's our, just a second here. So I've got a SeisWare project open in SeisWare Geophysics right now. And here's my well properties dialog. So I've got a UWI. I'm just going to post in the string for that UWI. Great. So I've got that. Once again, not really showing anything that interesting, but I've got the well. I could print the UWI, for example. Now, what if I want to go a little bit deeper into that? What if I want to grab, say, my sonic curve data? Well, as part of that script that I've thrown together, you can do that as well. And we'll go get log curve. And then I'm just going to specify my login instance for the project that I'm connected to. I'm going to grab that same well that I've specified as a variable. Then I'm going to just say I want to grab the DT curve, and then I'm going to give it a depth unit because the depth units on this are in feet. So I could do that, and then if I print that out, I've written the script in such a way that allows me to grab it as a, sorry about that, grab it as a data frame. So I've pulled out my sonic curve as a data frame with measured depth values in feet and then the sonic values. So this is just a small example of what you can do with the SDK, but I'm going to keep going with a couple more examples and show you how it can scale up and things that might be a little bit more interesting than just a really simple, straightforward one. So next, kind of continuing on with the example of log curve data, what if I want to do a quick QC of log curve data in my project? Well, there's a library out there called Missingno, so it's been posted in the chat here for anyone who's interested in it. And it's a quick way of scanning through larger data sets just in general to see where you may have missing data and where you don't have missing data. And I've set up a notebook here that can run through, and there's a little bit more code involved in this one, but we've got a, just let it connect. In this example, I've got a widget here that allows me to take a look at all the wells in my project and quickly scan through and see where I may have missing data or where I have available data. I've got a note there to look at a particular well, but I won't scan too much through the list. This is more just to give you an idea, and so I can see which curves are present on this well and where they may or may not have data. Some of them have data in the shallow sections, some of them don't, some of them go deeper. Yeah, so that's just another example. Next one I have is for looking at culture data. So I've got another project here where I've very crudely drawn a bunch of polygons on my map. So I've got all these polygons. You could maybe pretend that these are smoother circles representing where I may have different pools or something like that. And in SeisWare, in our application, we have ways of taking a look at what the area of one of those polygons might be, and manually doing it one at a time. But what if I want to scale that up and take a look at all of the objects in that layer and get an idea of what all of the areas are for those different objects? So another thing we've got in here using Connect by SeisWare is a small little application that allows me to, let's see, it's just running here. So this is my code here in VS Code. You can use Connect by SeisWare in a Jupyter Notebook or VS Code or wherever is convenient for you, wherever you're used to. But basically, I built this little GUI to select a project, and then once it connects to that project, it pulls up a list of all of the culture layers in it. And then from there, I can output a file that has statistics on it. So I can output this file. And that gives me a spreadsheet of data containing a bunch of closed areas of all those polygons that I've drawn. And the point I want to get across here is, thanks to this, I've thrown together this little simple user interface, and I've been able to transform the data coming out of SeisWare in a format that I want to see it, that I can use kind of a little more extensively, saving me a ton of time, potentially giving me a nice pipeline of data that I can do further analysis on in another way. And speaking of doing further analysis, another thing that you can do with this is build a connection to another something like Power BI or Spotfire that you can use to display dashboards. So you can build a Python dashboard or in Power BI or Spotfire. And what I've done here is, using another set of code, extracted data from a SeisWare project and brought it into a PostgreSQL database that then I've connected to Power BI. And so with this, kind of the point I want to get across is, while it's possible to, like I said, connect to our SQL database, we don't have all this data stored in a SQL database. We don't necessarily store our log curve data or our directional surveys or our grid files. And so thanks to Connect by SeisWare, I'm able to pull the data out and extract my grid data along the XY coordinates of my directional survey and set it up so that it's in a format that's really easy for me to display in a dashboard. The next example I have, there's another link for it to a repo that I've put together. But continuing on with the idea of extracting log curve information, there's a ton of libraries and a ton of algorithms out there that we don't have necessarily implemented within SeisWare, within our application. And even if we did implement them, in our software. It might take a little bit of time. Software development isn't instant. But if you wanted to get access to a particular algorithm or use something like scikit-learn, for example, that's available in Python, and if you wanted to apply your data to it, well, you can use Connect by SeisWare for that. And I've got a notebook here that has been posted. The link to it's been posted in the chat. And the notebook, for anyone who wants to try it out, while it can use our SDK or Connect by SeisWare, you can also set it up just to bring in a LAS file. And the example I have here is once again from that Teapot Dome demo set. But if we run through this here, I won't go through the whole thing because that will take a little bit of time. But what I have is a well with some log curves, and I've run it through a bunch of different clustering algorithms. And in fact, I've run it through, built k-means clusters on it, and thanks to the connection, I was able to take the log curve data out, go through my notebook, do some experimentation and analysis on it, and then in this case, it's an unsupervised clustering algorithm, so the colors don't really mean that much in this case, but I was able to run it through and then push that data directly back into SeisWare here. So here's my clusters in our SeisWare log editor. We can also take a look at them just in the notebook. And so there's the comparison. And this kind of algorithm, while it's not currently implemented in SeisWare, the broader point is that you can connect to the data and pull the data out, analyze it, and push it back into the program. Finally, the last example I have is just in terms of connecting to a third-party application. So there's a software out there called Petro Alchemy that's an open source decline curve analysis tool. And there's the original link to it there that was created by a gentleman named Michael Wentz. And I created a fork of that data that allows you to connect directly to a SeisWare project. So the initial application was able to just pull data from a text file or an Excel file. But what I've adapted it to do is pull production data directly out of a SeisWare project. So here's 176 wells. And then what I can do is do my decline curve analysis, get that curve, get a bunch of EURs, and then it's been set up to export those EURs directly back into SeisWare. So a push-pull connection with an application that has its own installer that can be set up and installed and used to help make your lives easier. So in summary, SeisWare projects aren't restricted to just things within the application. Using Connect by SeisWare, you can create tools for your own analysis. You can pull data, transform it, analyze it, push it back into SeisWare geophysics or geology. And so you can take data from your project and do whatever you want with it. Pull it out, kind of manipulate it, and you're not restricted to just basically the export formats or how we store data in our tables. So that's it. Thank you all for listening and paying attention to me. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can always email us or visit our website if you want any more information.